Let me tell you something about New Jersey. This state is one of the most historically important places in the entire United States of America. It's quite literally where the entire history of the country was decided. Battles, capitals, revolutions, treaties signed under trees. Half of the American Revolution was fought, won, and administered right here. Today we're covering New Jersey's most historic towns, the places that built this country, the spots every American should know about and absolutely does not. Let's go. We start in Cape May at the very southern tip of the state, a place North Jersey people have technically heard of but won't drive to because they don't go more than 45 minutes from their exit for anything. Here's a fact that sounds made up. In 1976, the entire city of Cape May was designated a National Historic Landmark. We're not talking a single building or neighborhood. I really mean the whole city. Every block, every porch, every street. Cape May is one of the only cities in the entire United States to ever receive that designation. The reason is primarily its preserved Victorian architecture. Cape May has the second largest concentration of Victorian buildings in the country, second only to San Francisco. Towers, wraparound porches, gingerbread trim, and colors you'd normally only see on a dessert menu. It looks like someone built an entire city out of dollhouses and just left it there perfectly intact. And the reason it survived this long is almost accidental. Cape May was a massive resort town in the 1800s, basically the first of its kind in the nation. Presidents came here to vacation, from Abraham Lincoln to Ulysses S. Grant. Then Atlantic City got built, Cape May got bypassed, and nobody felt the need to tear anything down to put up something newer and uglier. The Victorian architecture sat there for 100 years untouched. Cape May's entire historic legacy is the result of being economically passed over. They basically got forgotten, and in getting forgotten, they preserved everything. That's either a beautiful story about accidental conservation or the most Jersey Shore ending imaginable. Princeton is technically in New Jersey, but has spent 300 years quietly pretending it's somewhere more prestigious. Princeton is New Jersey for people who find the rest of New Jersey embarrassing. And Princeton is also, whether those people like it or not, one of the most historically significant places in this country. Nassau Hall at Princeton University briefly served as the capital of the United States during the Revolutionary War. Not the state capital, the actual functioning capital of America. In 1783, the Continental Congress relocated to Princeton while Philadelphia dealt with a mutiny from unpaid soldiers. And it was right there in Nassau Hall that Congress received official word that the Treaty of Paris had been signed, meaning the war was over, Britain had conceded, and America was real. The confirmation that this entire revolutionary experiment worked arrived in Princeton, New Jersey. Then everyone went back to talking about Philadelphia. Princeton has been called the most history-dense place per square foot in all of New Jersey. Aaron Burr studied here. Einstein lived here for 22 years. F. Scott Fitzgerald went to school here, got rejected by a girl here, and developed the personality that eventually produced The Great Gatsby. Not entirely Princeton's fault, but at least partially. Inside the town, it's all old stone and ivy and people walking around like they're thinking about something important. Some of them are. Some of them are just thinking about where to get lunch. The food is very good, so honestly, fair enough. The city of Trenton has been dealt a genuinely brutal hand, and it is also one of the most historically significant places in the country. Those two facts sit next to each other uncomfortably, and both need to be said. December 26th, 1776, the Battle of Trenton. George Washington's first major military victory of the Revolutionary War. The famous crossing of the Delaware, Washington leading the Continental Army across an ice-filled river in the middle of the night to launch a surprise attack on Hessian forces the morning after Christmas. One of the most audacious military moves in American history, and it worked. At that point, the cause was collapsing. The army had been retreating for months. Men were deserting. Thomas Paine had just written, "These are the times that try men's souls," because things were that bad. Washington desperately needed a win, and he got it in Trenton. That victory changed the momentum of the entire war. There's a serious historical argument that without Trenton, the Revolution fails. The United States as we know it might not exist. The Old Barracks Museum, a British military barracks from 1758, is one of the best preserved colonial military sites in the country. The Trenton Battle Monument marks exactly where Washington's artillery deployed. They sit in a city that has been systematically underfunded and overlooked for decades, while places that did less for this nation get more tourists, more investment, and more credit. This place was even the official capital of the United States for a brief stint in 1784. The motto on the old bridge, Trenton makes, the world takes. Whoever came up with that had no idea how right they were. Morristown earned a title that not many people know about, military capital of the American Revolution. It was the place Washington chose twice to winter the Continental Army, the actual headquarters of the Revolution during its darkest stretches. Washington first brought the army here in 1777 after Trenton and Princeton. The Watchung Mountains offered natural defense. The surrounding area was supportive of the war efforts and could supply the troops. Then, in the winter of 1779 to 1780, he came back. And this time, it was catastrophic. That winter was the most brutal of the entire 18th century in North America. Worse than Valley Forge. Snowfall records shattered, supply lines froze, and soldiers of Jockey Hollow were starving and freezing simultaneously. Washington wrote that his men had gone days without food. He feared the army might simply cease to exist. But it didn't. They held up. And in the spring, they were still an army, still capable of winning the war. Morristown National Historical Park preserves all of it. Washington's headquarters at Ford Mansion, the reconstructed soldier huts at Jockey Hollow, the physical evidence of an army that refused to quit when it had every reason to. Today, Morristown is an affluent Morris County suburb with good restaurants and real estate prices that would make those soldiers weep for entirely different reasons. Underneath the commuters and the coffee shops is one of the greatest survival stories in American military history. Salem, New Jersey is not Salem, Massachusetts. Many people hear Salem and go straight to witch trials. What happened in Salem, New Jersey is interesting in its own way. Founded in 1675 by Quaker settlers, Salem is one of the oldest English-speaking settlements in the Delaware Valley. The Salem County Courthouse, built in 1735, is still in active use today. It is the second oldest courthouse in use in the entire country today. Actual cases are heard in a building constructed when George Washington was just 3 years old. But the story that defines Salem is the Salem oak. There was a white oak tree in Salem, ancient, estimated at around 600 years old, under which the Quaker founder John Fenwick reportedly signed the very first treaty with the Lenape people of New Jersey, a treaty of peace, an agreement to coexist. Whether every detail is perfectly accurate, historians debate. What's not debated is that Salem's early relationship with the Lenape was notably different from much of what was happening elsewhere in the colonies. The Salem oak became a living symbol of that founding. Generations grew up with that tree. When it collapsed in 2019 after 6 centuries, the town genuinely mourned. They held a memorial, and they preserved the wood. That's what a real historic town looks like. Not just buildings and monuments, a living thread between the founding moment and the people still there. Perth Amboy is a facts-only situation. Take these ones in. Perth Amboy was once the capital of East Jersey because, yes, New Jersey was once split into East Jersey and West Jersey. 2 separate colonies with 2 separate capitals. Perth Amboy then became the capital of the entire province of New Jersey. It is home to the oldest city hall in continuous use in the entire United States. Not the oldest building that used to be a city hall, the oldest city hall in continuous, uninterrupted operation since construction. That record belongs to no other city in the country. Perth Amboy is also home to the Proprietary House, official residence of New Jersey's last royal governor, William Franklin. who was, incidentally, the illegitimate son of Benjamin Franklin. William Franklin was a committed loyalist who refused to break with Britain, even as his father was helping draft the Declaration of Independence. Benjamin Franklin essentially disowned his son over it. The relationship never recovered. The father of the American founding cut off his own child because the kid stayed loyal to the crown, and that child lived right here in Perth Amboy, New Jersey. That story alone is more interesting than half of what I was taught in history class, and nobody knows about it because it happened in New Jersey instead of somewhere that gets credit for things. Burlington sits quietly on the Delaware River doing everything right and getting almost no recognition for any of it. Founded in 1677 as a Quaker settlement, Burlington became one of the most important towns in colonial New Jersey almost immediately. It served as the capital of West Jersey. Burlington was a major port, a commercial hub, and a center of Quaker intellectual life. Because of that Quaker character, Burlington had an unusually progressive culture for the era. Its Quakers were among the earliest organized opponents of slavery in the American colonies. They were having that argument before most of the country decided it was worth having. The oldest library in New Jersey, the Library Company of Burlington, was established here in 1757 and is still operating. The city has a church building dating back to 1702. James Fenimore Cooper was born here. Captain James Lawrence, who gave the Navy its motto, "Don't give up the ship," was from Burlington. Every building has a story. Every street has a connection to something real. Almost nobody outside South Jersey knows any of it. That's not a knock on Burlington. That's a knock on the rest of us. Welcome to Freehold, New Jersey, birthplace of Bruce Springsteen, site of the Battle of Monmouth, home of the recently closed but once oldest racetrack in the United States. This town contains multitudes. The Battle of Monmouth took place on June 28, 1778. The British were evacuating Philadelphia and marching across New Jersey toward New York. Washington pursues, and the armies meet near Freehold in temperatures reportedly exceeding 100 degrees. Men were dying from heat as much as combat. In the middle of it, a woman named Mary Hayes, the basis for the Molly Pitcher legend, is carrying water to soldiers and reportedly manning a cannon after her husband collapsed. Whether Molly Pitcher is one specific woman or became a composite figure representing multiple women who served that day, historians still argue. The battle is where the legend lives either way. The engagement ended essentially as a draw, but strategically it was an American success. The Continental Army, now trained by Baron von Steuben at Valley Forge, stood toe-to-toe with British regulars in open field combat. Something had changed. Monmouth Battlefield State Park preserves around 1,800 acres of the actual battlefield. You can walk the ground where this happened. It's one of the most underrated Revolutionary War sites in the country, sitting in a town most people know only because a guy from there wrote Born to Run. Greenwich, Cumberland County. This is the one. The entry most people, and including most New Jersey people, have absolutely no idea about, and it's a genuine injustice. Everyone knows the Boston Tea Party. December 1773. Colonists dumped British tea into Boston Harbor. Museums, reenactments, 250 years of Boston telling that story at every possible opportunity. December 22nd, 1774, Greenwich, Cumberland County, New Jersey. A group of local men disguised themselves as Native Americans, raided a cellar where a British merchant had stored a shipment of tea, hauled it to the town center, and burned it in the public square. Same political statement 1 year later in New Jersey. Boston has a museum. Greenwich has a historical marker. The men were put on trial for destruction of property. The jury, their neighbors, acquitted every single one of them because in Greenwich, New Jersey in 1774, destroying British tea wasn't something anyone in that town was going to punish. Greenwich was a real colonial port town on the Cohansey River, connected to the Delaware Bay. These weren't random people acting out. These were engaged, politically aware colonists who decided they weren't sitting on the sidelines. Ye Great Street, the original road laid out in the 1600s, still runs through town. Some of the original colonial buildings still stand. Greenwich burned tea, won in court, and got written completely out of the national story. Classic. We finish where New Jersey itself arguably begins. Woodbridge, the oldest original township in New Jersey, chartered by King Charles of England in 1669. It's been continuously operating as a township ever since that date. Woodbridge was an established town 100 years before the United States even existed. It predates the Declaration of Independence by over a century. It was settled by Puritans from New England and England, serious people with serious ideas about governance and community. And here's an interesting detail. Woodbridge may have hosted the first organized anti-slavery meeting in the entire country. The Germantown Quaker petition against slavery in 1688 is often cited as the first formal anti-slavery protest in American history. But there's historical evidence that Quakers in the Woodbridge area were engaged in organized opposition to slavery around the same period, among the earliest such activity in the colonies. Today, Woodbridge is a diverse, sprawling Middlesex County township. Suburban development, strip malls, right off the Garden State Parkway. Not what you picture when you think historic town. But the oldest township status is real. The oldest original township in New Jersey. Exit 127. That's the video. Subscribe, drop a comment. See you in the next one.